final driver for new approaches to global problem solving and governance is that we now have 4 pillars of society that can be involved in achieving change on a global level. Now, the first, of course, is government, or the state. And states are important. They're not going to go away, not in my lifetime. States have these little powers, like a monopoly over military force and the right to tax and so on. And when it comes to almost any issue, we need to find a way to get states involved to leverage this huge muscle that they have to bring about change. But we now have 3 other pillars. One is the private sector. There were no private companies at Bretton Woods in 1944 because they weren't really viewed as pillars of society. I mean, most people agreed with the Milton Friedman perspective that the single purpose of a corporation is to make value, money, for its shareholders. Well, now we're beginning to understand that corporations have a more important role to play in society, and that they need to do this in a responsible way. Banks and Wall Street, for example, we give them a license to perform a whole bunch of functions that are critical, and they need to perform those functions in a way that doesn't undermine the economy, or else their license will and should be revoked. But on a positive side, if you look at companies today, many companies are real leaders in achieving social change and in fighting for all kinds of positive things in the world. I'll give you an example. Who would be the most important organization in the world fighting for democratic rights in China? You could say, I don't know, the UN or the US State Department or Amnesty International or something like that. I think you could make a case that it's Google. Google has taken on the government of China around censorship, and they may well win. So corporations are now pillars of society, or can be. Thirdly, we have the rise of the civil society. Now, this includes NGOs, not for non-governmental organizations, but it also includes universities and other not-for-profit institutions, foundations. Philanthropists are becoming very important. And there were no NGOs at the table in Bretton Woods. There were some in the room, but they weren't at the table. And then the main reason was they weren't viewed as pillars of society, and there were very few of them. There were a few dozen NGOs in the world in 1944, important NGOs. Well, now the civil society is what, like 10% or 15% of the economy of a lot of Western countries. So when there's a disaster somewhere in the world, it's not just states that intervene. You see the civil society kicking into action, and they're very powerful. And the 4th pillar is a new one. It's you. You as an individual can be a pillar of society. So 2 youngsters during the Haitian earthquake go onto the Ushahidi network. Several days have gone by. They find a 7-year-old girl buried in the rubble in Port-au-Prince under a shopping center. She's buried, she's dying. She gets a little text out in Creole. They pick it up, translate it, geolocate her. They advise the authorities. They dig her out. 2 youngsters in Boston are pillars of society, saving a life, but also helping to solve a global problem, because the Haitian earthquake wasn't just a local problem. You can't have a horrific thing like this happen in the world and just let it go. So we've now got these 4 pillars working together in a sense of interdependence and growing interdependence. For example, the expression that I use often is business can't succeed in a world that's failing. Businesses need to step up and to create a world that's secure and that is prosperous, and where the metabolism of business functions in an effective way. And everybody has an interest that's collective in working together to build a better world. And if you look around today, the world is too unequal, it's too unsustainable, it's too conflicted, and it's too unjust. And all these pillars can now come together in something very new. The jargon is a multi-stakeholder network for solving global problems and global governance. There's a simpler term, and that's the term that we use, the Global Solutions Network. Networks that are multi-stakeholder, they're not controlled by a state, they're enabled by the internet, and they're attacking a global problem. And today these things are shaking the windows and rattling the walls of all of our traditional approaches to problem solving.